Hello, this is Reiko Osoroshi. On this channel, I introduce Japanese ghost stories. Today's ghost story is about Kankandara. Kankandara. When I was in elementary and middle school, I was a country kid and had no worldly knowledge. My close friends, A and B, and I would do foolish things every day and live a reckless life. A and I were completely abandoned by our families, but B's mother always cared for B. Although she maintained a strict attitude, she always went out of her way to help B. One day during our third year of middle school, B and her mother got into a heated argument. I'm not sure what it was about, but it seemed to have emotionally hurt B's mother. While her mother was in distress, B's father returned home. Upon seeing the situation at a glance, B's father ignored B and went quietly to comfort her mother. With disheveled clothes and messy hair, her mother gazed blankly at the floor with eyes like those of a dead fish. Seeing her in such a state, B's father spoke to B. B's father, you've become a person who can trample others like this. Don't you understand how much your mother cares for you? Ignoring B, B's father embraced her mother while speaking. B, shut up. Do you want me to kill you? Huh? B showed no intention of listening to what her father had to say. However, B's father remained unresponsive and continued speaking calmly. B's father, do you really believe you have nothing to fear? That there's nothing scary about yourself? B, I don't. If there is, then show me. After a moment of silence, B's father spoke again. B's father, you're my son. I know exactly how much your mother worries about you. But if all you can do is trample on her like this, then I also have my own thoughts. I'm speaking not as your father but as an individual, as someone else. B's father, I'll make it clear from the start that I'm telling you this because I'm prepared for you to die. If that's okay with you, then listen. Though he sensed some intense determination in those words, B taunted him, saying, just tell me already. B's father, you know the place in the forest that's off limits, right? Go in there and venture deeper. You'll know what to do once you get there. Go ahead and act like you did just now. Show what you can do, if you can. Note the translation provided is a summary of the original text. The original text contains some informal language and abbreviations. The forest that my father mentioned was a small mountain located near our home, at the foot of which there was a place that resembled a sea of trees. The mountain itself was easily accessible, and the entire forest seemed ordinary, but as you entered, there was a specific area that became off limits. It was like drawing a small circle inside a square and saying, do not enter. Within that circle it was highly specific. The area was enclosed by a fence of about 2 meters in height, with thick ropes and barbed wire wrapped around it. The entire fence was covered with hanging white paper decorations like a unique type of paper strip and countless bells of various sizes. Due to its peculiar and partial nature, the alignment of the fence itself was distorted, and it was altogether extraordinarily unusual. Moreover, on specific days, we noticed several shrine maidens gathering at the entrance. On those days, the entire vicinity became off limits, leaving us wondering what they were doing. Various rumors circulated, with the most prevalent one being about a cult brainwashing facility. Frankly, going all the way to that point was troublesome, so hardly anyone ventured deep into the area. Without waiting for B's response, my father took my mother upstairs. B left the house, met up with A and me at the agreed upon spot, and that's where we heard the story too. For the father to say something like that, it must be serious. Me, isn't it a place rumored to be a cult brainwashing facility? They want to catch her and brainwash her, huh? It's scary, but what do we do? Are we going? B, of course, we're going. I'll follow my father's hint. Just for fun, A and I followed along, and the three of us decided to head to that place. We prepared some tools and set off around past 1 in the middle of the night. We arrived at the site confidently, illuminating our way with flashlights as we entered the forest. The path was easy to walk, even though we were lightly dressed, and since we always wore tabi traditional Japanese socks, it was comfortable. However, reaching the specific area required walking for about 40 minutes. However, something strange happened not long after we entered the forest. Soon after we started walking, we began to hear distant sounds. The silence of the night emphasized those sounds quite strongly. B was the first to notice. B, hey, do you guys hear anything? When we listened closely following B's words, we indeed heard something. The sound of rustling leaves and branches snapping, faintly coming from afar. The sound seemed to approach us from a distance, but that didn't evoke much fear. We thought it might be some animals, and without worrying too much, we continued on. The idea of animals being around before considering anything else provided some reassurance. However, even with that assumption, we had to squint our eyes to see each other in the darkness, even though we were walking together. It was quite dark, and we couldn't see anything without the flashlights. The moon was up, but it was mostly obstructed by the trees and was of little use. We had our flashlights, so it was no mystery that we knew where we were. However, it was so dark that even we, walking together, had to strain our eyes to make out each other's figures. In such darkness, what would something without light be doing? Why was it moving the same way as we did? B. This can't be real. Is someone tailing us? A. I don't feel like anyone is getting closer. They've been at the same distance since a while ago. Indeed, for about 20 minutes since we entered the forest, the distance between us and the source of the sound remained the same. It didn't get closer or farther away, maintaining the same distance throughout. Me, are we being watched? Feels like it. If it's a cult or something, they probably have some weird devices or something. The sound seemed to be made by a single entity, accompanying us all along. We stopped to think for a while and judged that it would be dangerous to try and find out its true identity. Thus, we decided to keep moving while keeping an eye on our surroundings, making our way forward. As we progressed, we were continuously followed by the sounds, but once we could finally see the fence, we stopped caring about the sounds. It was the fence's appearance that became even more bewildering. Although it was the first time for all three of us to see it, it was beyond our imagination. At the same time, a thought we had not considered before occurred to us. Even from our perspective as people who usually dismissed the existence of spirits and such, what lay ahead didn't seem to be something realistic. It felt tremendously dangerous, something far beyond our imagination. Could it be that this place is famous because of that reason? Are we really in a dangerous place? The moment we entered the forest, we started to think that we might be in trouble. So, do we break this and go inside? This is way too abnormal. Nobody in their right mind would think this is normal. B, shut up. Don't say stupid things. Let's just go in. B scolded us for being frightened by the abnormal appearance of the fence, and she began to break it with the various tools she brought. The sound of destruction was overshadowed by the deafening noise of countless bells. However, since we hadn't expected it to be this difficult, the tools we brought were quite inadequate. In fact, it was incredibly sturdy, almost as if made from special materials. In the end, climbing over it was the only option, but thanks to the rope, it was relatively easy to ascend. However, as soon as we crossed the fence, we felt an intense sense of discomfort. It was a feeling of confinement or being trapped in a cage. A and B seemed to feel the same way, and they hesitated to take a step forward, but we had already crossed the fence. So there was no other choice but to keep going. As we started walking forward again, we noticed something immediately. The sound that had been following us stopped as soon as we crossed the fence. Frankly, the overwhelming eerie atmosphere was far worse than the sound. But A made it even worse by saying something. Could it be? It was here all along? This fence doesn't seem to have any entrance or exit visible from here. Maybe that's why it couldn't get any closer. B, there's no way. Even the place where we noticed the sound following us, we can't see anything from here. So there's no way it could have known our situation from the moment we entered. From a logical standpoint, B was correct. The forbidden area and the entrance to the forest were quite far apart. Although I mentioned that it took about 40 minutes, we weren't strolling around. The distance was considerable. But because the idea of this being something otherworldly had crossed my mind, I couldn't completely deny A's words. As we began to feel that something was terribly wrong after seeing the fence, A and I became increasingly anxious. Meanwhile, B remained assertive. B, whether it's a spirit or something else, if what you're saying is true, then it means it can't leave this fence, right? It's not that big a deal then. Saying so, B continued moving deeper into the area. We walked for another 20 to 30 minutes after crossing the fence, and that's when we saw something strange. Specific 6 trees were connected by sacred ropes, forming a hexagonal space. Moreover, a more official-looking paper decoration than the ones hanging on the fence was placed there. And in the center, there was something like a donation box. The moment we saw it, none of us could speak. Especially A and I were feeling increasingly disturbed by the situation. Even though we were just fooling around, we vaguely knew the general purpose of sacred ropes. In that sense, the area was undoubtedly designated off-limits because of the site right before us. We had finally arrived at the very place we set out to see. Me, your father was probably talking about this, right? It's impossible to go on a rampage here. Clearly, it's dangerous. However, B showed no sign of backing down. B, there's no guarantee that it's something bad. Let's just check out that box for now. There might even be treasure inside. B walked through the ropes and entered the hexagonal space, approaching the box. Although A and I were more worried about what B might do rather than the box itself, we followed her for the time being. The box seemed to have been exposed to the elements, as it was full of rust. The top had a lid with a mesh, allowing us to see inside. However, there was another board underneath the lid, so we couldn't see the content after all. Moreover, the box had some elaborate drawings, probably family crests or something similar, on each of its 4 sides, all different from each other. There wasn't a single overlapping pattern. A and I tried not to touch it as much as possible, while urging B not to handle it roughly. We examined the box, trying to figure out how to see inside. After checking it thoroughly, we noticed that only one side could be removed. B, oh, this side comes off. We can see inside. B removed one side of the box, and A and I also peered inside from behind B. Inside the box, there were 4 small, bottle-shaped containers placed in the corners, each filled with some liquid. In the center of the box, there was a 5 cm long stick-like object with a red tip, placed in an unusual shape. 6 of them. Only 4 spots are painted red. Me, what's this? A toothpick? Hey, these bottle-shaped containers look creepy. I feel grossed out. B, we've come all this way for pet bottles and toothpicks? This makes no sense. While A and I only touched the bottle-like containers lightly, B picked one up and even sniffed it. When B tried to touch the V shape, for a moment, it stuck to B's sweaty fingers and slightly shifted when pulled away. In that moment, tingling ting ting, tingling ting ting, the sound of bells rang out with tremendous force from the direction opposite to where we had come from the hexagonal point, faintly visible through the fence. All 3 of us cried out, "Whoa," and simultaneously looked at each other in shock. B, who the hell is doing this? Stop fooling around. B ran towards the source of the sound. Me, idiot, don't go there. Hey, B. This is dangerous. Hurriedly trying to catch up to B, we saw B suddenly stop and shine the flashlight ahead, standing still. What's wrong? I asked, and as A and I rushed closer, we saw that B's body was trembling uncontrollably. Hey, what's going on? As we asked, we unconsciously followed B's gaze, and there it was. From the shadows of one of the trees lined up among the others, half of a woman's face peeked out, calmly observing us without squinting despite the flashlight. She slowly opened her mouth wide, showing her upper and lower teeth. The scream, which could have belonged to any of us, caused us all to turn and run frantically. Our minds went blank, and our bodies instinctively took the best course of action. We didn't have time to look at each other. Each of us rushed towards the fence. We jumped onto it as soon as we saw it, climbed up as quickly as we could, and then jumped down to return to the entrance. But in the confusion, A struggled to climb up the fence, and it seemed she wouldn't make it. Me, A, hurry. B, come on, hurry. We knew our words would only add to A's confusion, but we couldn't help urging her on. Finally, with all her might, A managed to climb up the fence. As A was about to reach the top, both B and I looked back in the same direction. The tremors and sweat made it impossible to make a sound. Realizing it, A also turned her gaze towards where we were looking. There, along the fence that stretched toward the mountain, on our side, the figure was clinging. We initially thought it was only a face, but it was naked, with only its upper body exposed, and it had 3 arms on each side. Skillfully holding onto ropes and barbed wires with those arms, it kept its mouth wide open, like a spider crossing its web, moving toward us. Unbearable fear overwhelmed us. Screams. A immediately jumped down and fell onto me and B. We quickly helped A up and ran towards the entrance in one go. We couldn't look back. We focused only on what was ahead and ran desperately. Even though it wouldn't take more than 30 minutes at full speed, it felt like we had been running for hours. As the entrance came into view, we saw some figures. Oh no, please don't tell me. All 3 of us stopped abruptly, holding our breath as we observed the figures. We couldn't tell who they were, but it was a group of people. It wasn't that thing. Once we confirmed that, we started running again and jumped into the crowd. Hey, they came out. No way. Did they really go beyond that fence? Hey, hurry and let the people in the back know. The people who had gathered approached us in a state of excitement. We couldn't immediately understand what they were saying. All three of us were in a daze with our minds blank. We were taken to a gathering place usually used for events, even though it was already past 3 in the morning. Inside the place, my mother and older sister were there, and A's father and B's mother too. Except for B's mother, whom I had barely interacted with, my mother and A's father were crying. B's mother's face was one I had never seen before, apparently filled with an expression of worry. B's mother, I'm sorry. This incident is my husband's, and ultimately, my responsibility. I am truly sorry. Really. She bowed her head repeatedly. It felt unpleasant to see a parent showing such a vulnerable side in front of their child, even if it was another family. A's father, that's enough, dear. Everyone is safe now. My mother, that's right. It's not your fault. Afterward, the parents mostly talked amongst themselves, and we were left dazed. It was late, so they confirmed that we were all safe and then just disbanded without any explanations. The next day around noon, I was woken up by my older sister's knock. When I opened my eyes, her expression was so tense, as if we were continuing the events from last night. Me, what's going on? Sister, we got a call from B's mother. Something terrible is happening. I picked up the phone and answered, and she shouted at me with an intense tone. B's mother, B. B is acting strange. What did you all do last night? Didn't you just go beyond the fence? The atmosphere wasn't conducive to a conversation, so I hung up the phone and immediately headed to B's house. I had apparently received the same call and was already there. The two of us listened to B's mother's story. According to her, B returned home last night and suddenly started screaming that both arms and legs hurt. It seemed like they were in too much pain to move, and B collapsed while stretching both arms and legs, and continued to writhe in pain in that position. Although they somehow managed to carry B to the room, the pain continued, so she became concerned and called us. Upon hearing the story, we headed straight to B's room, and even from the stairs. We could hear B screaming, "It hurts, it hurts." When we entered the room, B was indeed writhing in pain with arms and legs stretched out. Me, hey, what happened? Pull yourself together. What's wrong? Despite our calls, B only continued to scream, not even making eye contact with us. What's going on? Both A and I were utterly confused. We went back to B's mother, who asked in a calm tone, which was quite a contrast from before. B's mother, please tell me what happened there. Everything will be clear once you tell me. What did you do there last night? I understood what she wanted to know, but to answer her, I would have to recall that incident again, which was painful, and I couldn't explain it well. In fact, what I saw dominated most of my memory, and I had left behind the cause completely. B's mother, who asked, what you did, not what you saw, seemed to be pointing that out. Upon B's mother's request, we tried to recall last night's events and find the cause. What did we see? If it was about what we saw, we should be experiencing the same thing as B. However, what did we do? But we mostly did the same things in response to that thing. We all touched the box and the bottle-like container. The only thing left was the toothpick. Both of us realized it. The toothpick. Only B touched it, and they shifted its position. Moreover, they didn't put it back in place. We conveyed this to B's mother. As soon as we did, her expression changed rapidly, and she started trembling. Then she quickly took out a piece of paper from a drawer, looked at it, and made a phone call somewhere. And I could only watch the situation unfold. After talking on the phone for a while, B's mother returned, her voice shaking, and said to us, they said they would meet us, so go back and prepare right away. I'll inform your parents. Even without saying anything, I think they'll prepare for you. Please come to our house again the day after tomorrow. It made no sense to us. Who are we going to meet, and where are we going? When we asked for an explanation, we were evaded and quickly sent home. We were just told to make sure you go. Without understanding the situation at all, A and I went with B's mother 2 days later to meet someone. B had apparently been taken there the day before. I thought it might be a bit far away, but it wasn't just in another town, but in a different prefecture. We took the Shinkansen for several hours and then drove for a few more hours from the station. We were taken to a deep mountain village, far from the center of the village. We were guided to a certain mansion there. It was a huge, old mansion, with separate buildings and storage sheds, an impressive place. When B's mother rang the doorbell, a man and a girl greeted us. The man looked like he was involved in something shady and was wearing a suit. The girl, a bit older than us, was wearing a white garment and red trousers, a typical shrine maiden's outfit. In their greetings, the girl, apparently the man's niece, introduced herself with a name I couldn't quite catch. It sounded like, Aoi Kanjo, to me, but I wasn't sure. It seemed to be a name entirely different from what most people would know. I didn't know anything about her or her family, but for the sake of simplicity, I'll call her Aoi. We were led into a spacious room, and the conversation began with a mysterious and oppressive atmosphere. The man asked, "Is your son resting now? These kids were with him, right?" B's mother confirmed, and then the man said, "Can you tell us where you went, what you did, and what you saw in as much detail as possible?" We were suddenly asked, and we were confused, but we managed to tell the man and Aoi the details of the events that night. However, when we mentioned the toothpick part, the man cut us off and shouted in a commanding voice, "What did you just say?" We became even more confused about the situation. Yes? Man, you guys didn't move that thing, did you? He leaned forward, as if he was about to grab us, and yelled at us. Aoi stopped him and spoke in a soft, delicate voice. Aoi, in the center of the box. There should have been something like a small stick, arranged in a certain shape. Did you touch it? Did you touch it and change its position, even just a little? Me, well, yes, we accidentally moved it. We think it shifted from its original position. Aoi, do you remember who changed its position? It's not about touching it or not. It's about whether you changed its position or not. Aoi and I looked at each other, and we said it was B who changed its position. Then the man sighed and said to B's mother, Mother, I'm sorry, but there's no hope for your son anymore. I didn't ask for the details, but with that symptom, there could be other possible causes. I didn't think he would have moved it. B's mother, that can't be. Whatever else was going to be said, B's mother seemed unable to speak, and she bowed her head for a while. Even though she didn't say it, A and I felt the same way. What did he mean by, "There's no hope for your son anymore"? What are they talking about? Even if we wanted to ask, we couldn't find our voices. The man sighed again while watching the three of us and began to talk. Finally, they started talking about what we saw. The name of the creature, whether Naradara, Kankandara, or Kankandara, seems to vary depending on the person's age and family background. Nowadays, the most common name is simply Dara. In special families like the man and Aoi's, they use the name Kankandara. It's like a legend or a myth now. The villagers of a certain village plagued by a man-eating serpent asked for help from a certain shrine maiden's family, who were known to inherit various powers as descendants of gods, to exterminate the serpent. The chosen family sent a particularly strong shrine maiden to confront the serpent. While the villagers watched from the shadows, the shrine maiden bravely faced the serpent. However, in a moment of vulnerability, the serpent devoured her lower body. Still, the shrine maiden used various techniques to protect the villagers and continued to fight desperately. However, the villagers, convinced that she had no chance with her lower body gone, made a surprising offer to the serpent. They would sacrifice the shrine maiden in exchange for the safety of the village. Feeling disdain for the powerful shrine maiden, the serpent agreed. It made the villagers cut off her arms to make her easier to eat and devoured the shrine maiden, who was now in a Daruma-like state. In this way, the villagers gained temporary peace. Later, it was revealed that this plan was devised by the shrine maiden's family. At the time, the shrine maiden's family consisted of 6 members. The disaster occurred immediately. The serpent disappeared one day, and in a village where no one was supposed to be attacked anymore, people started dying one after another. In the village, in the mountains, in the forest. All the dead had either their right or left arm missing. 18 people died, including the 6 members of the shrine maiden's family. Only 4 people survived. Uncle and Aoi took turns explaining the situation. Uncle, I'm not sure when this started being passed down or where it came from, but the box has been moved and offered at regular intervals. The administrators change with each occasion. You saw the family crest on the box, right? It represents the families that have been offering the box's location up until now. Families like ours have a gathering to evaluate this kind of thing, and they decide there. Sometimes there are foolish people who volunteer for it. Other than the administrators, no one is told anything about Kankandara. Only the consultation contact in case of an emergency is conveyed by the administrators. When conveying it, a counselor, someone from families like ours, is present, and that alone helps us understand the meaning of the story. Currently, it's not us serving as the counselor, but since it was urgent, they contacted us yesterday. Apparently, the call B's mother made the day before was to a different place, and after hearing the details, the other party decided to leave it to them, bringing B with them. It seemed that B's mother had already been informed about some details while we were at that place. Basically, it is moved to either a mountain or a forest. As you may have seen, the 6 trees and 6 ropes represent the villagers. The 6 sticks represent the Shrine Maiden's family, and the pots placed at the 4 corners represent the 4 survivors. And the shape made by the 6 sticks represents the Shrine Maiden. As for why this format was adopted and when the box itself became like that, there is no one who knows more details than my family, including mine. However, it is most talked about as a theory that the 4 survivors researched everything they could to appease the resentment in the Shrine Maiden's family and came up with this unique format. Or so it seems. Regarding the fence, only the bells are part of the formal format, while the ropes were added by the administrators at that time. Uncle, in our family, some people have exorcised Kankandara in the past, but all of them died within 2 to 3 years. Suddenly, one day, the ones responsible for the events have hardly survived. That's how difficult it is. Even after hearing all this, the 3 of us were still completely in the dark. We could only stare blankly. But the situation changed once again. Uncle, Mother, I suppose you have some idea of how dangerous this is now. As I mentioned earlier, if only the sticks weren't moved, it might have been manageable. However, this time, it's beyond hope. B's mother, please, can't you do something? It's my responsibility. Please, I beg you. B's mother didn't back down. Even though it was clear that she wasn't at fault in any way, she continued to bow her head and desperately plead. But it wasn't like she was crying, she had the look of someone who had prepared herself for something. Uncle, we also want to do something about it. But if you saw it after moving the sticks, you too must have seen it. The Shrine Maiden who got devoured by the serpent. You saw her lower body, right? That's how you understood the meaning of that shape, right? Huh? Neither I nor A understood the meaning of his words. Lower body? We only saw the upper body. By lower body? We saw the upper body, but... Upon hearing that, both Uncle and Aoi were surprised. Uncle, what are you talking about? You moved those sticks, right? Then you should have seen the lower body. Aoi, the girl who appeared before you, did she not have a lower body? Then, how many arms did she have? 6 arms. 3 on each side. But there was no lower body. We both answered while confirming with each other. Then, suddenly, Uncle leaned forward again and approached us. Uncle, are you sure you didn't make a mistake? You really didn't see the lower body? Me, yes. Uncle turned back to B's mother and smiled. Uncle, Mother, there might be a way. Upon Uncle's words, both B's mother and we held our breath and paid attention. The 2 of them explained the meaning of the words. There are 2 ways you can be affected by the Shrine Maiden's resentment. One is by changing the shape representing the Shrine Maiden. And what you should not see is the appearance of the Shrine Maiden represented by that shape. Uncle, in reality, once you move the sticks, it's over. You inevitably end up seeing the Shrine Maiden's appearance. But for some reason, you 2 didn't see it. If someone other than the one who moved it saw the same appearance, then that girl wouldn't have seen it either. Me, what do you mean by, didn't see? What we saw was, she is still the Shrine Maiden herself. However, she wasn't Kankandara. She appeared as a Shrine Maiden. That night, it was like a game for her. The Shrine Maiden and Kankandara are the same existence yet different? That seemed to be the case. Uncle, if Kankandara hasn't shown up, then what's attacking that girl now must be something like Aoi said, just a playful entity. If you leave it to us, it might take a while, but we can do something about it. The tense atmosphere seemed to finally ease up. Just knowing that B would be saved was enough, and B's mother's expression was truly amazing. You could see how much she had worried about B in these past few days and how much that anxiety had been relieved with that smile. Seeing that, both Uncle and Aoi seemed to relax as well, suddenly becoming more like ordinary people. Uncle, we'll formally take care of that girl. I'll explain to her mother later. The 2 of you should have Aoi purify you before you go. Be a bit more moderate in your fearlessness from now on. After talking a little more about B, my mother stayed behind, and we had Aoi purify us before heading back. It was the custom of this house, and B wasn't allowed to see us, so we didn't know what happened to her or what she did. I don't know if it was treated as a transfer or if she was still enrolled, but I haven't seen her since. Well, it wasn't like she died or anything, and I heard she's living somewhere properly now. By the way, B's father never showed up during the whole commotion. I don't know what he was thinking. Both A and I calmed down quite quickly. There were various reasons for that, but the biggest one was definitely B's mother's appearance. After this, both at my place and A's place, our parents started gradually interacting with us more. With that and everything else, we naturally stopped being reckless. As far as we understood, on specific days, shrine maidens gathered, and the family members served as counselors. Though Kankandara was recognized as dangerous, it was also treated as an entity somewhat resembling a deity. Apparently, the serpent was a god of the mountains or forests. So once a year, they perform kagura dances and offer Shinto prayers. Also, the sound we heard while entering the forest was because Kankandara was kept free roaming within the fence. But the hexagonal shape in the box seemed to act like seals, so Kankandara rarely shows itself unless the shape is disrupted. The place of offering is designated by some kind of rule, and they calculate the precise details to determine the area. Generally, once inside that area, you cannot leave, but if it's surrounded by a fence like the one we saw, it can sometimes stick to the outside. That's about all we learned. It seemed they had already moved from where we lived. I haven't checked because I don't want to go back there, but nearly a year later. The process of removing the fence began, so they were probably in a different location by then. How was it? If you have any other stories you would like me to introduce or any questions about the stories, please leave a comment. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thank you, and stay tuned for the next episode.